So what kind of occultist stuff are you into? Because I kind of have a history with this shit.
Extremely broad. I don't think I can even, like, I'm trying to, let me try to think how to
Try me.
Trying to like chase play, there's different currents like this. I mean, you're probably, so you may be familiar with this, like, Aleister Crowley talked about the 93 current. He's like, I'm on the 93 current. Be like, what the fuck is that, you know? But as time passed, I kind of understood that it's like signals, it's like radio stations, you know? And with the mysteries, or with, like, you know, kind of underground spiritual movements, it really is like different rivers, like different streams. And trying to think of like how to, you know, like, so like I'm involved with African traditional stuff, Norse pagan stuff, a lot of exposure to chaos magic, witchcraft stuff, but not like I'm not really into Wicca. I like traditional witchcraft is like traditional witchcraft is cool. Like hoodoo stuff is cool. Like, what else?
Any particular, hold on one sec before we continue. Traditional witchcraft, what are we, any particular names you can attach to that?
Yeah, I mean, so that's
any particular texts or practices you can attach?
I will give a couple books. See, this is the thing. It's kind of, it's like flavors, you know what I mean? It's like music. So there are certain, there's one, there's a publisher which I was really into for a minute, but I also think that the owners of it are like annoyingly leftist, which is Scarlet Imprint. They produce really like top shelf books. And were you familiar with The Game of Saturn? It was a book that they released a couple years ago.
Is this the Cube of Saturn? It's got his symbol on the front, and it's all about sort of invoking the primordial darkness, right?
So this book, it's about it's about the Solabusca tarot deck, which I believe is the first tarot, like full tarot deck in existence.
Oh Jesus, we're going back to the Venetians. Okay, yep. Yeah. And okay. I'm familiar with the Solabusca.
So the guy who did research into the book discovered that that there was, well, first of all, doing research into it, understanding that, like, you know, magic permeated life and like politics, right? Like, people don't understand that. They're like, oh yeah, it's just some crazy stuff that people did. But like, if you had money, you were paying people to do, you know, you're like what Nancy Reagan was doing for Ronald Reagan, consulting an astrologer and like, how, like, all right, don't go to that meeting, reschedule it. That was how it was done. You know, like, learned men oftentimes became, you know, your best bet is to become like a sage, be employed by one of these noble families. And apparently there was a hidden, the guy's research revealed essentially that the deck is an encoded grimoire. The imagery is polysemous. I wasn't familiar with that term before, but it's like there are like references to historical figures, but the cards are intentionally like referencing different things simultaneously. It's like it's kind of like a labyrinth, but it points to the teachings of a man named Plethon of Alexandria, who was secretly trying, he spoke at some conclave of like cardinals in Rome. I don't know the year, but he secretly was trying, he was like talking about Plato, like giving speeches, being like, actually, like, you guys dig Aristotle, like, now we dug up some Plato texts, that could be Christian too. But actually what he was doing was trying to revitalize Hellenistic worship. Like, he was trying to like he was trying to sell it to the nobles underground. And the way he sold it to them was this dark Gnosticism, which essentially equates the demiurge with this like draconian, and like this like draconian version of Saturn, who they basically believed that they could direct metempsychosis or reincarnation through placating this entity. So the idea is that, like, oh yeah, you die, yeah, sad, but like, you know, you'll come back again because you're kicking up to this guy. This is your guy, and the power will stay within these families. And part of what's like really crazy about it is like some of the suggestions in the tarot decks kind of like mirror rumors about conspiracy theories these days, you know, about like allusions to human sacrifice. And it's like, okay, this could be tongue-in-cheek for like certain kinds of sexual rights, or it could actually be literal, you know, like so that, yeah, so there's all a Hermetic thread and an Egyptian thread and a sort of Renaissance thread. But.
Okay. So I will continue my questioning because I kind of want to get a pulse on everything you're sort of touching on. I personally, so back in the day, ever since I started sort of fixing myself and going down a certain chemical path to repair my brain, I've stopped engaging with it, but you know, I still remember. So I think a valuable thing to note about the Solar Busca is, if I remember correctly, the family who commissioned it were very wealthy mercenaries. Like the artists obviously put all this stuff in, but at the end of the day, the people who were acting as the customers, the ones who wanted the deck, were mercenaries and assassins, to my knowledge. So what you have is this device. Those spoken to who are in the know have always been on the idea of, if you get a copy of the Solar Busca, do not use it unless it's in dire circumstances. Oh. It's a dodgy fucking deck. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's sort of divination for murderers, and it's a bit out there. It's heavy. There's a podcast called Rune Soup that go more into the nature of the Solar Busca, and I think it's valuable to get modern scholarship on that sort of thing. But beyond that, you first mentioned you were into sort of African mythology and sort of a occult practice, and seeing how this the CCRU actually ties a lot into this in the second section after the Lemurian Timewar. We're going to be dealing with hoodoo and voodoo and all kinds of astrology to deal with the dichotomy between Atlantis and Lemuria as non-existent landmasses in imaginary war. I kind of want to get your take on that. So where do you stand with that? I am still listening for the record, but I will disappear off the screen for a bit.
Can you just rephrase that? I don't really understand the question.
So you said you were interested in one of the things you were interested in was sort of like African occultism. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically. That's the thing too, because I mean, music is like my favorite allusion to it, or a way of articulating it. It's like, you know, why do you like certain music? You know, I don't know. It's like this. There's something inside that kind of resonates. You know, that's like a reflection. So with these currents, it's not like a dry, rational, like this is intellectually interesting to me. It's like I feel it, like you vibe with it. And I tuned into that in college when I was taking avant-garde film courses, and there was specifically a film by Maya Deren, who is this avant-garde or like a surrealist filmmaker, like from the 40s, I guess, like black and white. And she went to Haiti and became a voodoo priestess. She just dug it, and she made an incredible documentary called "Living Gods of Haiti: Divine Horsemen." I think I reversed that, and it just like put a pin, like, you know, like it just like pinned in my mind, and it largely had to do with the music, I think, because those rhythms, there's just these primordial rhythms that will put you into a trance if you're like, you know, on that wavelength or like receptive to it. And I got really obsessed with the crossroads, like just like, because they, you know, they start off, they're like, nothing happens unless you talk to this guy. And I'm like, I like that guy. That's the guy. That's where it's at. You know. And then when I went to New York, I lived in Brooklyn for about 7 years, and I was really like, I'm an artist, but I also really like curating shows. I like multimedia events. I like, you know, it, and it's like, it hits different points because it's both entertaining to me and also it's like a good way of like networking, connecting to people. So I started to produce events that were geared towards that like aesthetic, because that was like, I don't know if it's so much now, but like for a while that was very big in the art world, was there was this sort of like occult aesthetics, especially with um, like noise musicians and performers. And I started hosting a group that was just like an esoteric discussion group, just like what's cooking, what do you have, like what are you working on, what are you reading, like blah blah blah. And that was kind of how I really started tuning into Santeria specifically. Yeah, and but since then I've like